Pastor Russ here with hope for today. What's the difference between temptation and testing? Quite often I'll hear someone say, I feel like I'm being tempted. Not so often I hear someone say, I feel like I'm being tested. The differences lie in the origin of each and the desired results. In James 1:13, James is very clear when he says, let no one say when he is tempted, I'm being tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted, and God himself does not tempt anyone. God does not tempt us. So temptation doesn't come from God. Where does it come from? Well, there's three sources. One is our enemy, Satan. The second is the world in which we live in, with our culture and our values that go away from God. And the third source is from within our side, our own selves, our own earthly or worldly desires, you might say. The purpose of temptation is to draw us away from God, a negative result. But what about testing? While God doesn't tempt us, I do believe that Scripture teaches God indeed tests us. I think of Job. I think of Jesus in his time in the desert after his baptism. What's the purpose of a test? Think about education. Why do teachers give tests? And I know what some of you are thinking, to torment us. I had some of those teachers too. But the reason that teachers give tests to us is not to torment us. It's certainly not so that we would all fail. If all the students in the class failed, it wouldn't be so much a reflection on the students as it would be on the teacher for failing to properly or adequately teach the material. The purpose of a test is to show us if we've mastered the material. Think of a math class. If the whole class had passed a math test, it shows that the class is ready to advance to the next material, which quite often is more difficult. God tests us to see where we are in relationship to Him. A simple way to think about that, am I trusting in God to help me get through this, or am I trusting in myself? God's plan for us is very clear, as Jesus himself said, I came that you might have life and have it in all its abundance. And that's found in John 10:10. But I also think of James 1, verse 2 and 3, chapter 1, verse 2 and 3, where James writes, he says, consider it all joy, my brothers, whenever you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance, and let endurance have its perfect result, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. When I think of that idea of something that God brings my way that makes me quote, quote, perfect, not in the sense of without sin, but I may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing, it harkens back to that idea of that abundant life that Christ has for us. Now, here's the thing about God. What if we fail that test? Well, God's such a loving God. Guess what? He gives us a retest. And you know what? That makes me want to make sure I try to pass that test the first go around.